You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
X-Men. Get it!
Hey, brother, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we take on every story. We take them all from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Zach and Adam. I need to ask you something, brother.
Yeah, what's that?
You know what I had before this recording session?
A beer?
We'll get to that. I went down to Sonic. Had a jalapeno burger, a chicken fried steak sandwich, a chili cheese dog with extra onions, French fries, tater tots, washed it down with 1 beer, 2 beers, 3 beers, a shot of whiskey, a margarita, and a Bloody Mary. And I'm ready. I am ready to take on this episode.
I'm glad to hear it because this is episode 316. It is the end of our Attitude Era. Can I get a hell yeah?
Hell yeah! And can we tell you something? We talked about a lot of things that we could do for our 316. We figured we could sit here. We could sit here and tell you all about the great 316 issues that have come out over time. We figured that we could talk to you about everything that we've seen, all the rock solid stories, but instead we decided to bring our attitude to the highest level. And you know what? We can't do this one alone. Unfortunately, we need someone to step in to mediate, to take care of some of the beef that we've got, the feuding between Adam and I here. So coming to us straight from WWE SmackDown, it's Jason Ayers.
Hey guys, what's going on? How's it going? So that dinner sounds like a recipe for heartburn at my age, to be completely honest with you.
Listen. If it's good enough for some people, it's good enough for me. I'm here. I'm ready for it, and I'm ready to talk to you about some fantastically interesting comics that I think really embody some of the ideas of an attitude era that may or may not exist in some forms of media. Now, when you hear the words attitude era, Jason, what do you think of?
Well, I mean, obviously in my world, attitude era, you think the 90s, you think the late 90s, the early 2000s, you think extreme, you think pushing the limits, you know, much like the WWE attitude era was in the late 90s. And I think these books that you picked out today, interesting is definitely the word. That's definitely one way of putting it. But yeah, attitude. Yeah, okay, we'll go with that.
I like to think that these were books that at their time also wanted to push the limits in some of the same way that other people have pushed the limits over time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And content warning listeners, you're going to hear about some sexy stuff. You're going to hear about some violent stuff. You're going to hear about some stuff that Marvel doesn't want you to know about anymore this episode. So strap yourselves in. This is going to get rough.
It is going to get rough. And it's going to get rough thanks to our Patreons. Our patrons make this show possible. No one picked this episode except for us. So sorry, patrons. This one is just because of a bit. Folks, if you don't, I'm going to get behind the curtain for a second. Guys, there was a gentleman in the late 90s. His name was Stephen Austin, and he once yelled at a man that he said essentially John 3:16 stupid. This is Austin 3:16. It says I just whooped your ass, and it became like a catchphrase for a lot of people over the time. So now that's the dual meaning of 3:16 in this world. That's why we're doing this bit. It's a whole thing. Okay, back to. I've been waiting 17 episodes for people to understand that joke, and I needed people who didn't already get it to know it now. Adam didn't know it for a little while.
Man, I don't know. That was not.
I don't know either. I just have wrestling friends that I've picked up a handful of things from.
I think the context really brings it all together, though.
Yeah, exactly. See, Jason gets it. Jason
Yeah.
gets it.
Well,
So,
I would hope Jason gets it. I feel professionally he's obligated to understand if I know something. Here's the wrestling things I know. I know about that. I know about Rey Mysterio because my son continues to talk about him doing a lot of flips. Macho Man Randy Savage, who was in Spider-Man. I also know about that.
it's a strong start.
I feel like it's a good foundation.
yeah. Before we start with our first book, Jason, right before we went on air, we were admiring your comic book collection. So do you want to just give us a sense of
give us your bona fides on comics.
Yeah, why are you
okay.
X-Men? What's your X-Men story?
Well, so I've been a comic collector obviously since I was a kid, right? Just kind of so say we all, right? Growing up, it was always comics and wrestling, and as you can see, one turned into a career, the other turned into a hobby. I'll let you pick which is which, but always kind of gravitated towards X-Men books, and which is sort of how I found you guys. To be honest with you, initially was looking for podcasts to pass the time on the road, and lo and behold, there were very few good X-Men podcasts, and you guys are top of the list. So
look at that.
I like
we
that.
love to hear it.
And that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I'm on your show right now.
Yeah, suck it, Connor. That's why they call me the bad boy of X-Men podcasting right there. I tell you what.
That sort of thing right there, right? Connor, if you want to reach out, feel free. No, but that being said, as you two and nobody else in the world can see behind me here, there's 3 file cabinets completely full of X-Men books. The idea being that I'm on this crazy, horribly ill-advised mission of collecting every X book ever, which one of the books that we're discussing today I didn't even know existed, so now it's on the list, which thanks for 9 more issues that I don't really need, but I need now.
Are you I need to ask Jason, are you counting X-Men books that were not traditionally published by Marvel, but are definitely comic books that Chris Claremont and Salvador LaRocca drew in episodes of TV Guide?
Well, I mean, I am now.
Or are you counting comics that only exist on mini CDs that came from Burger King Kids Club meals?
Adding that to the list as well.
We could
every
talk
X
later.
ever. Yeah.
I have a bag of mini CDs that no computer can actually use at this point because no one uses optical drives.
Nobody has a CD drive anymore.
No one does. And you know what? I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me.
It's okay. You're still a step above the half-finished Gambit novel that exists in Fabian Niciez's 3.5 floppy disk drive, that he talked to us about years ago.
We are above that. I had forgotten about the secret Gambit novel that Fabes has.
Half finished.
Hey, he's like a, I don't want to say he wasn't a real author, but he has multiple published novels at this point. He could probably get that thing back.
Does he really?
I've seen. Oh yeah,
he writes murder mysteries now.
Yeah, he has New Jersey-based murder mysteries called. I think the first one's called Suburban Dicks.
Yeah,
interesting. All right,
I've not read it.
I'm gonna assume that's private detectives.
I'm
hoping
it is. Yeah.
Listen. Whom amongst us has not enjoyed an innuendo from time to time?
All right, where are we starting this week with our very extreme Attitude Era episode, Zach?
Well, we're going to start with something that thinks innuendos are too subtle. And this is the only comic that I would say is not in coexistence with the more traditional Attitude Era that some would consider in wrestling. This is from 2010. It's by Craig Kyle and Chris Yost with pencils by Gabriel Delato. It is X-Force, Sex, and Violence. What a combination. And I'm gonna be honest.
For the price of one.
Gentlemen, I've got to ask, does it seem like there's a lot more of one of these things in this book than the other?
I mean, it's quite the blend for sure. But yeah, we kind of skew a little bit, don't we?
I'm not against it because I don't want to read Craig Kyle and Chris Yost's sexy comic, but there is a lot of violence. I feel like this is more of an excuse for them to be like, you know how we could be bloody in X-Force? What if we took that up 3 levels?
Is this
it's
really
triple X-Force?
Yeah, is it really that much more violent than what X-Force already was, though? I mean, I'm thinking about this era, and these are the last 3 issues of X-Force before it switches over to Uncanny X-Force with Remender. And I'm just wondering, why wasn't this just an arc? Like, this had to be a mini so that they could like really go mature on it. It seems odd.
I think it had to be a mini because of Second Coming.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
Second Coming was going on, and they were like, "No, we got to keep everything focused on Second Coming."
Got it. Okay. Keep the baby out of it.
Got to keep that. Well, she's not a baby anymore. She comes back. Baby came back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
what's
Jason,
the
had
deal
you read-
here?
Yeah, Jason, had you read this? Had you known about this comic beforehand?
No, honest. I mean, I was aware of it, but reading it was not. Listen, I've got a bit of a backlog going on as it is, and sex and violence isn't exactly something that's jumping to the top of the list just when I'm looking at it. But
It doesn't seem like it's going to be a cornerstone story of the
No.
era that you had to pick up on.
no, I don't think so. I think this is probably a one and done. Let's be completely honest. But it was. You said it before. Interesting. Interesting is the word. The art was great. I really I enjoyed the visuals on it.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a second about Delato. Very fluid, very beautiful. Like, this this run of X-Force started with Clayton Crane, who
Mhm.
I like, but if someone said I feel like Clayton Crane's art is very static, I would say, okay, yeah, you're not wrong. Delato walks that line being very painterly and like Crane, but with some energy, with some poise, with some stretching and distortion where needed to really sell some of the action. I think this book, if they really just wanted, hey, let's do 3 kind of plotless actiony things where we can do a lot of violence. They picked a good artist to do that.
Yeah, mission accomplished. I think Delato is way better than Clayton Crane, in my opinion. I just think that the art has a similar coloring quality to it, right? Because it's like everything is very high contrast and everything is very shiny. Doesn't matter what it is. Everything kind of looks like it has a light, fluorescent light on it, right? But Delato is also capable of doing sort of character work and expression work that you don't always see in the regular X-Force book. So I thought it was really well drawn, actually. The plot of this, relatively simple. Domino takes a job, doesn't realize who she's taking a job from, and it turns out that she pisses off both the Assassin's Guild and the Hand, and Wolverine has to come and help save the day, and the two of them hook up repeatedly throughout the 3 issues. That's pretty much all that happens.
Kind of had to, because otherwise it'd just be X-Force violence at that point, right?
Which is just X-Force. That's the problem.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I want to comment on the sex part of this, because there is one part of it that I think is good, and there's another part of it that I think is just kind of like, why did they do it? So you're advertising this thing as having like sexual content, right? And inevitably, they're not showing any of it. There's a lot of like, here's a sword through a guy's head. Here's shooting people point blank in the face, but we're not going to show anybody with their clothes off, any kind of shot we see of anybody in a bed. Everybody's got like at least some underwear on, right? Everything is just suggestion. That part I think is like really cowardly. If you're gonna,
I would say it's a very distillation of American attitudes towards sex compared to violence.
Yeah. What the part of this that does work for me is the innuendo, right? So Craig and Yost do a very good job of kind of inserting these, pun intended, these little bits and phrases throughout the thing, right? Where it's like, you weren't saying that last night. And like, that kind of stuff actually works in the context of this book, and it's funny. So props to them for that. I just wish they could have pushed it a little further.
I like what Adam's wanting is just full penetration, just a real big story here. Make this essentially adult film, and I get that. I don't think that's what the Marvel comics are going to want. They are a children's underwear brand on the side, so I think they might have some boundaries they want to keep. But I agree, the patter between Domino and Wolverine is fun. Domino is a character that sometimes doesn't get enough characterization, and I really like her in this as She's just kind of having fun. Yeah, she stole a little bit of money, but it was from bad people, so that's not that bad.
She pulled a transporter and saved a bunch of human trafficked women. So good for her. And then got all that money.
The problem is the Assassin's Guild is mad, so they hire a bunch of assassins, including Boomerang, Clay from Madrox, Black Mamba, Bullet, Bushwhacker, Knock,
Razor
a character
Fist.
I've never heard of, Razor Fist from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Jason, do you have a favorite of these random assassins that they pick out of nowhere?
I lean Razor Fist only just because who among us doesn't want a literal razor fist, right? Like I feel like that
you're
would come
right.
so in handy just in everyday life. Maybe a little tough to do some everyday life tasks with, but by and large, yeah, I think I'm a Razor Fist guy. I might even get a shirt, Razor Fist guy.
Razor Fist guy's a good one. I do like Razor Fist. Boomerang's weird for me in this because Boomerang's just a different character now.
Well, Boomerang is like a Spider-Man villain that I would not have placed within this group. Right.
So he has become a Spider-Man villain. He started as just like a general Marvel jobber. Like his first appearance, he fought the Submariner.
Oh, that's interesting. Wouldn't have placed him there. Boomerangs don't work well underwater.
No.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Put a fin on it.
Hey, hold on. Did you know that Boomerang once joined the Thunderbolts and went back to World War II to fight Nazis?
Wow. Hey, good for you, Boomerang.
Good for Boomerang.
Okay.
Wow. You know what? Props. I wasn't expecting that.
It makes sense for a Boomerang to be a time traveler because he would always come back.
Come right back. It's good.
Thank you. Here all week.
This is just a big fight comic for three issues. Is it anything else? Like, is there anything more to this besides it's a pretty fight comic?
It feels to me like if an 80s action flick was thrown into 2010's X continuity. Basically just ripped completely and just thrown right in there and let's blow a bunch of stuff up and let's shoot a bunch of people and let's see what happens. And we'll throw sex in there just because.
Just because. I mean, listen,
I can kind of
that VHS.
Yeah, this can be one of those things where, like, all of the Assassin's Guild supervillains were like bodybuilders or wrestlers, from the 80s. And I don't know. I agree with that assessment. I think this is fun. Is it living up to its title? At least half of it, yeah. And at the end, it just goes back to being an X-Force book, right? Because X-Force does come and help save Wolverine and Domino, even though Wolverine explicitly told them not to.
You know what? Sometimes your faction, your crews just got to come in, tag in, and help you out. I think it
almost
works.
feels like that was shoehorned in just to get us back to the Uncanny X-Force launch, right? Like, okay, here's this self-contained story, and okay, by the way, there's X-Force.
Yeah, and here's the final hurrah of this thing. But it's pretty. And I do think the big splash when it's like, and we're X-Force and it's the team page. I'm like, okay, this works. I got pumped when I saw that. They got the pop from me. So I'm for it, even if as a whole, the story's not amazing, but the Delato art is top notch.
I agree. So we should probably take a stab at ranking this, Zach, on our big old list.
What?
Our big old list.
What?
Our big old list.
Okay, I can't keep it up, Jason. I'm sorry. You got it.
Yeah, I'm at what.
Again, this was one of the 4 YouTube videos I did watch in preparation for this.
Was I supposed to be repeating myself or what?
You're supposed to be confused because Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, okay. I'll edit myself out then.
No, you don't need to. You don't need to. It's fine. Leave it all in. This is live, baby. We're doing it.
We're live now.
We're live.
What?
I
have editing control. I can edit anything out of this show that I want, like all of my coughs and sneezes.
But this entertainment program is live for the people 3 hours every Monday. It's not. It's an hour every Monday.
Jesus.
I was gonna say that wasn't on my docket for today, but
no.
We don't. We have never. I don't think we've ever had a 3 hour episode
Maybe 300 was close.
300 wasn't even 3 hours long, Adam.
No.
Anyway,
All right.
we don't have 300. We have 822 X-Men stories on our list, with the best being House of X Files 10, number 100 being Wolverine, the Shiva scenario, number 200 being Jean Grey Psych Force, number 300 being Cap Wolf, number 400 being The Trial of Magneto, number 500 being Claws and Webs from MCP 117 to 122, number 600 being the Daddy Boros issue of X Factor, number 700 being Wolverine Night of Terror, number 800 being the first appearance of Banshee, and the worst X-Men comic of all time is 2099 Word of Tomorrow at 822.
All right, we have.
I ran through a lot of those. I'm sorry, Jason. You probably don't have this list committed to memory or Excel spreadsheet like the rest of us.
I don't, but I have heard that that run through a number of times. So
We are going to ask your input as we go through here, though. So I think the first thing we can probably compare this to is at 124 Messiah War. I don't think this is as good as Messiah War.
Adam, I was looking at number 500 Claws and Webs, which is that really beautiful Sam Keith drawn Wolverine versus Venom story from Marvel Comic Presents. Okay. Again, very beautiful. Is a fight comic.
Yeah.
But like, I would want to, I do sometimes want to open that up and be like, yeah, this looks cool.
But you're going lower or higher than that, Zach?
I don't know. Probably higher, because right above that is the Otherworld arc of Uncanny X-Force. And I do think this is better than that. I don't know, Jason, what are your thoughts on those?
So I don't know that I've read either one of those, to be completely honest with you.
Have you not?
I have not. There's a lot
that Sam
of,
Keith one is pretty.
blind spots. Yeah. You said that was in Marvel Comics Presents?
Yeah, 117 to 122.
Nice. Well, from the way you're describing it, with gorgeous visuals, but maybe a little lacking on plot, that sounds kind of right in the same wheelhouse, right? Is what we're talking about here. Yeah, this is a book that I would possibly go back to and flip through, at the very least, the covers on, if not very deep into the artwork. But beyond that, maybe
a bit above that, Adam, is Generation Hex, the amalgam book. See, Jason's nodding.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for an amalgam book. I'm not gonna lie.
He's got that one.
I feel like this has to go below that, just based off that fact alone.
I would agree. Maybe better than Divided We Stand from Uncanny X-Men 149 to, or 495 to 499. The San Francisco stuff.
Yeah, that was a rough time period. Those later Uncannies.
Yeah, we have at 487 we have X-Force Volume 399 to 100 Dark Cathedral.
That's the Demon Bear comes back, and it's got Jim Chung art, and it's really
neat. That's X-Force Volume 1. I'm sorry.
That's X-Force Volume 1.
Yeah, I think that's better.
Yeah, I think we put it between Divided We Stand and Generation Hex. I think that's the right spot. That feels right
great
to me.
You okay with that, Jason?
That works for me.
All right, so this is going to be our new 497, X-Force Sex and Violence. And, Zach, can you just hold on a sec? I was just preheating my oven.
Oh my gosh, no, bad, no, Adam, no. Y'all, we're talking about Frank Thierry Wolverine now. Frank the Tank Thierry. Once tried to fight some of my friends in a grocery store parking lot over the internet.
Sure did challenge. That's true.
Listen. Everyone loves a good brawl. I believe the location was a Food Lion, but it was so many years ago.
Some kind of parking lot in front of a supermarket, right?
I got to get this story sometime.
I mean,
that's pretty much the extent of the story.
There's a little bit more. I'll let you know, Jason.
We'll talk offline.
About a few of the other details around that story, because there's some fun stuff to it.
That's all our audience needs to know about that story.
Our audience just needs to know there's some fun stuff around it. Frank Thierry's probably not going to fight my friend in a parking lot of a Food Lion, is the general gist. He is going to have written Wolverine in the year 2000. This is, so I want to call it Revolution's era, but Revolution's era Wolverine was supposed to be the Rob coming back, and spoiler alert for his ability to be consistent on a book in the late 90s.
I'm sorry, just in the 90s?
He got...
Ever?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I don't know why they were banking on that. Regardless, Frank Thierry and Sean Chen come in. This is their first arc, and what they do is they introduce a bunch of new guys for Wolverine to fight. There's a
And
bunch of new
gals.
dudes, bunch of gals. First off, they're terrible in this comic, but I honestly think they have a lot of potential. They're a great tag team. They're the Lady Killers. It's T and A.
What a name. What a name. I love the wordplay on it.
You mean
One of the things I noted down here.
You mean Harley Quinn and Harley Quinn?
Right.
Because that's all that Frank Thierry's doing here with these two.
I don't think he is, because Harley Quinn wasn't that big of a factor in early 2000s. Like, I think he's pulling from the same sexy fighty lady thing, but like Harley Quinn, I don't even know had hit like regular DC by then, or if she had just hit it.
Ooh, now I want to know. When?
Because what
Harley
animated series would have been 93
make
to
it
98 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. She doesn't make it till 1999. Pretty sure.
Is that the Batman Adventures, or is that a
No, Batman Adventures is 93.
Yeah, that would have been pretty contemporary with the series, right?
Make it to DC Universe. Let's see. Hold on.
The good folks at Bat Chat are yelling at us.
1999,
right
Batman Harley Quinn #1 by Paul Dini and Yvel Guichet. So it would have been before this. I'm not out of my mind.
You're not out of your mind, but I think it's more parallel thought than it is a discrete reference. Regardless, these are bad characters.
Oh my God.
They are
terrible.
poorly written. I bet you they could be in good comics today. I bet you there are writers out there that could do a really fun TNA book. It's not Frank Thierry, but I bet those writers are there.
Jason, what's your take on Block? BLOK.
Well, it feels like almost window dressing to the TNA characters, right? Like we can't just have these two girls out there doing girl killer stuff. We got to have a big guy with them. Interesting character. I don't know that it's one that I would want to see much more of. Not that there's much more to see, really, right?
The thing about Block is when you look at him, you can't see anything but him because he is an incredibly large man. He's a block, if you would.
Yeah.
Hence the name.
So Lady Killers, Block, the Major, not to be confused with another character we'll talk about in our third story. But these characters are all out to test Wolverine and push him to his limits. Why?
Well, because there's a gentleman. And he's heard that Wolverine is the best there is at what he does. And he's issuing a challenge to all of the X-Men superstars, saying, you're on my list. I'm coming for you. His name, Mr. X.
Now, Mr. X is not named in this arc, correct? He remains anonymous.
Wolverine calls him Mr. X at the end of it. He says, I'm just going to call him Mr. X. What else should we call a mystery guy? And I've got to be honest, Wolverine, you need to disambiguate that. You're on a team led by a Mr. X. Like,
it's poor.
X is X. That's bad branding. That's bad branding right there. X is your thing.
So would that make the Block and crew the X-Men, if you will?
Exactly.
Right? Like it just...
I think it's more of a degeneration of the X brand. Right. Yeah. It's a degeneration of X. Yeah. Closer around there.
We'll throw the of in there just so there's no trademark issues.
Yeah. Please don't sue me. Please don't sue me.
Mr. X is hilarious because he's basically like this white male fantasy. Like, what if I went out and studied every martial art real hard for like a year? Then I could be the best ever and know how to use swords and kill anything. And yet in Frank Thierry's world, that's exactly who this character is. And he is able to not only beat up Wolverine, but turn him into like his dojo partner for life, I guess.
It's a contract match.
Right.
He pulls out a contract at the end and says, "You got to sign it now, Wolverine."
Quite literally, yeah. You know, I know some guys that pulled that same kind of stunt of let's study every martial art for a year and absolutely got destroyed when they were in a real fight. So I don't know where this guy's training at, but
See, the thing about Mr. X is he's never getting over. He is never getting over. They keep trying too. Frank Thierry loves Mr. X, keeps pushing him. Heck, Jim Zub, no joke, Jim Zub did a Mr. X comic in the last 3 years. It was last year, it was in 2022.
Doesn't Mr. X end up on the Thunderbolts?
Yes, Mr. X also ends up on the Thunderbolts. Andy
Crazy.
Diggle's Thunderbolts. Y'all, I've not read Thunderbolts.
It's just amazing that anyone
Declan
would want this character to come back because he sucks.
awful.
Declan Shalvey drew a bunch of Thunderbolts, and he's one of my favorite artists out there. And I'm like, do I want to read that? I don't. Do I want to read the Thunderbolts? I heard that Jeff Parker's Thunderbolts is actually really good, and I'd probably enjoy it. But still, I don't care for Mr.
I don't know.
X.
Once you put your dog in the oven because you love murder so much, I'm out.
There's no coming back from that.
No.
Yeah, let's. So that does happen. He, as a child, commits animal violence by putting a dog in the oven. And like, if that's implied, that's one thing. The comic goes
Not
out of the way
implied.
to show you. Yeah, no, like graphically show you this dog having a bad day. And I don't love that. It's like legitimately upsetting that they put this in the comic to push the limits as much as they can to try and sell you on Mr. X being the real big bad guy for Wolverine. And look, people keep trying to come up with Wolverine's new arch nemesis. And like in this one, very literally, they have Mr. X beat up Sabretooth and say, "I'm cooler than you."
Mm-hmm. I don't buy it.
And that it doesn't scan. At least like Solemn is entertaining. Like he's not going to be Wolverine's next nemesis, but like Solemn showed up in a comic the other day that I wasn't expecting. I was like, "Oh yeah, this guy, he's fun." I'm never going to feel that way about Mr. X.
Yeah, it's bad when your villain has like slaughtered his parents, slaughtered every single one of his mentors, and like it's the dog that really always gets you, right? It's like when you watch a horror movie and you're like really worried about the pets. This is
I don't watch
scenarios.
horror movies that would scare me or a pet. No.
Oh, okay.
It's out.
It's kind of a trope
The dog's
sometimes.
got to get through. The dog's got to get through it in the end for me to enjoy a horror movie.
It doesn't always
Like,
happen,
what-
Zach.
I know.
What were they hoping
didn't.
for? Was it you know, are they hoping for the guy at home, the cat guy at home, to just be reading this book and be like, yeah, when they see the dog go in the oven? Like, who is that? Who is that panel for? You know?
I suspect, based on the fact that either the second or the third issue does start with Wolverine and a ball gag, and panels later, it is made explicitly that Frank Thierry is referencing Pulp Fiction because one of the characters says it's just like in Pulp Fiction. I just wonder, does Frank Thierry, like in the 90s, just love watching Reservoir Dogs and think, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my extreme version of this, and it's going to involve a dog in an oven.
Here's the thing about the Pulp Fiction reference. Say what you will about Quentin Tarantino. He does tend to like have the violence play a role in the story. It is being used to tell a different tale that's not just for violence sake. In Reservoir Dogs, in Pulp Fiction, like it's not there just to be over the top. What the Frank Thierry and Sean Chen Wolverine is how can I be the most over the top and shocking as possible? And I think that's a challenge that you face in a lot of media. That's like, okay, how do we push the limits? Sometimes limits are there for a reason, and you can play with the limits, and there's plenty of reason to go past the limits. But one of the rules I have at work is like, if there's a policy, if there's a rule, it's probably stupid. There might be a good reason, but understand why it's there first. Understand why you're breaking the rule, and then go ahead and break it if it still makes sense. But you got to have a good reason for it. And I don't feel like some of the pushing that's happening here, it feels like it's just being done for the sake of being edgy and mature, and frankly, 2001 Bill Jemas era Marvel.
Oh,
So can we talk about the scene, speaking of pushing the limits, where he literally lights up using a human being as his lighter?
yes.
That in the first book of this run just kind of set the tone for me on the whole thing. Like, I'm like, oh, we're going there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you know what's the weirder thing about that? This is nearly the last time Wolverine smokes a cigarette on panel.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know exactly when, but by the time New X-Men comes out later this year, Quesada has said, hey, we're not going to have all of the superheroes smoke now. Okay. We're not doing it anymore. So Wolverine doesn't by then. This is like, it's this run. This is one of like the last 3 cigarettes Wolverine ever has.
Amazing.
And it's on a
At
human
that point,
body.
you might as well light up on a human body, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's going out with style.
Go out with a bang.
I will also say the J.H. Williams III covers on this,
Not bad.
absolutely insane. I don't know that Adam, that covered a 160. Look at that Wolverine on that. He's a weird looking dude.
Well, I mean, 161 too, right? You got Mr. X posing and Wolverine jumping out of an X made of skulls. Like, it doesn't, I don't know. It's such a difference between what's on the cover and what's actually in the book.
It's
I
nuts.
do think
don't
it's
know.
worth noting, because this is a Liefeld-less episode, that Extreme Studios artist Norm Rapmond is doing the inks on these 3 issues, which does lend it a little Liefeldian touch.
It does, but I feel like Liefeld wouldn't do some of the things that is done in that. And that's an interesting thing to say. That like, no, some of this is too much for the Rob.
I don't think the Rob would put the dog in the oven.
No, that's a Mark Miller move.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Mm.
This does feel a little Mark Miller-y, doesn't it?
I would say that there was a lot of stuff coming around in the late 90s, early 2000s that were of the same breed. There was a tenor of, okay, the Cold War's been done for a while. We're a little bit aimless. We've got the, that Gen X kind of, disregard for everything going on. Like that was kind of culture in the zeitgeist there. So I think it's all coming in from the same place. And, to take it back to a place of Attitude Era, like that was not out of nowhere. That was part of, grunge was pushing everything, like MTV, the news. I was a child at the time, so I don't remember. I remember there's like a distinct difference between August 2001 and before, and then the next month and after. But like, I wasn't like in the culture there, but like, I do know that the late 90s, early 2000s had a unique vibe to it that I think this comic is of a piece with.
Sure. It's trying hard.
It's doing something, that's for sure. Yeah, and that cultural, like you said, that cultural zeitgeist, the MTV, the Jerry Springers, the again, WWF at the time, Attitude Era, is just so entrenched in culture, and that was just kind of, like you said, this feels like a product of that almost, that tail end of right before everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but it's not good, is the thing.
No, it's not.
No.
It's very much not.
No. Even Wolverine's
Like,
solution to this is to get out of his metal straitjacket by like having to gut himself, essentially, right? And like you could just tell that he's been Thierry has gone with that as the option so that he can up the gore and the violence of the story. And look, it's a Wolverine story. You can kind of expect this thing to happen, but to your point, Zach, it doesn't seem to have any character or story purpose. Like for all of the background on Mr. X, he's not interesting. He's not a character I want to spend time with. So
like sex and violence was gratuitously violent, but the over the top violence was the point. It was, right. Here's an artist showcase to do cool, crazy things to just push it, where this is like, look how mature and dark these comics can be. And I'm just like, I'm past that part of my life.
You keep saying mature, but this is incredibly immature in its
right.
Creation.
That's the rub
writing.
of, oh my gosh, listen. Frank's not my favorite writer. Let's just leave it at that. Hey, is this better or worse than Sex and Violence, Jason?
It's worse. I think it's verifiably worse.
Verifiably, I like that. I would say this is worse than a story that I think is comparable, which is Wolverine Enemy of the State. That's at 562.
I think we're farther down.
We are, but I have to scroll.
Like, I'm at 702. I would much
What's
rather read
702?
Spider-Man Storm and Power Man at Smokescreen, the PSA comic about not smoking. I'd much rather read that than this.
You always would, but also there's stuff like X23 Innocence Lost and the Romulus stuff. That's all right here, and I think you're right. This is worse than those.
Yeah. Is this as bad as X-Men and Weapon X Noir down at 712 and 713?
That's what I was going to say. I think it's kind of worse than Weapon X Noir.
Have you read those, Jason?
No, the noir books are one of those that I've been looking at tackling soon, but just for the pure weirdness of it.
If you're going to read just one,
there's one good
read
one.
the Wolverine one.
Okay.
Weapon X is bad.
Yeah, X-Men is real bad too. So,
is this better than X-Force Youngblood, Adam?
Ooh.
Now, which one is X-Force Youngblood and which one's Youngblood X-Force? I don't remember.
I think X-Force Youngblood comes first. So that's the better of the two, but it's still pretty bad. I would actually maybe give this the edge, but then we have Wolverine 98 to 100 down at 733. Furnace of His Mind, Anvil of His Heart.
Furnace of His Mind, Anvil of His Heart is better.
That has really good Kubert art in it that I think makes it better than this.
Yeah, that one's better. I think we're scrolling down a bit more.
Yeah. Jason, we have X Patrol at 737, another amalgam book. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, that was a tough one. I don't know. It might. We're in the neighborhood at least now. I feel like
we're getting to the right spot.
This is
What If Wolverine Enemy of the State?
Yeah, this is better than What If Wolverine Enemy of the State at 746.
But it's definitely not as good as the Goblin Force stuff in Mutant X, which is insane and too long, but also like I like the Goblin Force. When Steve Fox brings the Goblin Force into Dark X-Men, a book that both has Maggot and a Mushroom Girl, I'm in. I'm totally sold.
Right there. Very excited. So is this better or worse than Marvel Girl #1 from the Ashes, which is pretty bad? That's the one where they retcon Annie's death.
You can readers, you can't see this, listeners, I guess, but me and Jason are just like, what is there about Marvel Girl from the Ashes? Like, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm going to say this is better. I honestly think that it's worse for that book to have retconned that origin of Jean Grey than it is for Thierry to do the dog thing.
Okay. I'm
sure.
It's fine. 7:45 for those playing along at home.
Okay. So Zach was talking about the Gen X 90s and
nihilism.
And it wasn't nihilism, it was DIY. All right, anyway. I was there.
Hold on, wait. Do you think nihilism and DIY are like ideas that cannot intertwine?
They can,
but they must be separated. They are opposites.
Your DIY is more of a can do as opposed to nihilism is like don't do anything, right? So they are kind of
nihilism
opposed.
is like none of this really matters anymore. Nihilism is like an on way.
It's not that they can't. There was definite angst in the 90s. Anyway, that is not what I am talking about. I am talking about, of course, the next book that we are going to talk about, which comes at a critical juncture in American history. Zach, tell us more about the Brotherhood.
Jason, you had said you'd never heard about this book before.
I had not.
So you don't know about the writer X?
Do you know who X is?
I don't. Enlighten me, please.
Okay. Hold on.
We should make a point to say that this X is not Mr. X from the last story. This is the writer of this book was solicited as X. So normally when you solicit a book, comes out with who the writer and the artist are to get people hyped. This was solicited with no writer. It was anonymous. X.
And there was a lot of guesses of who it could be, given the time, given the content. This book comes out in May of 2001. So this is the same time as the new X-Men relaunch. Like, this is tied in with X Factor. It's very contemporaneous to, or not X Factor, X Force, but it's contemporaneous to that 2001 relaunch era. And it feels in that way. It's approaching things from a bit of a different angle. The idea of what a brotherhood of mutants would be and mean. And, you know, I think it's very interesting that X is taking this position here. X was never revealed until 2019, when I'm going to ask Jason, knowing the comic scene in the year 2001, any guesses on who X might be?
No, no, I'm not even going to try and fathom a guess, to be honest with you.
Well, here's the thing. This is a writer who decided, actually, it would be better if my name was not on this book. Like, they were like, it will probably sell more if they don't know it's me writing. Which I actually think is a true and accurate statement for Howard Mackie to make.
Not exactly the writer that you would associate with writing something that was supposed to be revolutionary, right? Like, Mackie is more of kind of an old hand who you rely on to write issues of Spider-Man. You know, like, there were occasional Mackie stories that we've talked about, including X-Men Unlimited 7, but not exactly like a stalwart for new and exciting ideas.
The stalwart for new and exciting ideas in this book is the artist, though, because Assad Ribic does some issues. The last 3 are done by Sean Phillips. And then Leonardo Manco and Joe Bennett also jump in here. We got some good covers. We got some good artists. Like, this book looks pretty good.
I'm going to take issue with that, but keep going.
Are you? Is your issue Kent Williams inks?
No. Here, the last 3 issues look great. Let me save this because it has to do more with the storytelling. Let's tell a little bit more about what the Brotherhood is. Like, what is this book, and why are there only 9 issues of it that we're going to talk about today?
Very important why there's only 9 issues. Jason, the seeds are here for you to figure out why there were only 9 issues. We've mentioned it in this episode, but I think it's still going to come as a surprise to you.
I can only imagine. Does it have something to do with when these books were being released by chance?
It has everything to do
with
everything.
Shocker.
It has everything to do with when these books were being released. No, this book is about a new Brotherhood of Mutants ran by a man named X, recruiting a young boy to join their terrorist organization. They promote revolution, not evolution. They do not feel like the governments of the world are going to respect mutants, and that the governments of the world are taking active stands against mutants, and that they cannot sit around and be Xavier's pacifists. They have to do something about it. And I do think that Mackie is trying to do something very novel and interesting, at least in the first 3-ish issues of this book. Like, he's actually trying to get into the head and say, okay, well, what would it be like in the real world? There probably would be some people who are rising up and doing it. He also makes he makes an observation of, okay, well, it's probably going to be these white guys who expected to have everything go on in their life right and turn into a different thing. And that's consistent with the rise of white nationalist violence that was occurring in the 90s. You were seeing that from the revolutionary sects. So that's something that, like, I think makes sense. There's a lot of this book that is thoughtful. However, and Adam, I know you're about to hit on this. Ideas and execution are different.
Yeah, this book sucks. This book sucks real bad. So because there's only 9 issues, there's 3 arcs. Okay. The first arc centers around this Brotherhood terrorist group trying to get this kid named Asher to join. Now, once Asher joins, doesn't really get a lot to do. He's kind of on the sidelines. He does come back by the end of the 9 issues as one of the 3 remaining members of this group that are also trying to double cross its leader. But there's a lot of buildup for not a lot of payoff after 3 issues. We immediately jump into the second arc, which plays into a Patty Hearst kind of story where the rich daughter of a millionaire who has been investing in anti-mutant medical research is turned to a member of the Brotherhood. She gets a little more to do. But then by the time we get to the third arc, and I think by this point, Mackie has gotten his marching orders, it's unclear to me when in the process this book is shutting down.
It's almost definitely, they were like, okay, we have to wrap this up in the next arc because it's what is it? Number 6 comes out in November. So likely already in process. And then Howard Mackie says, I do not want to write a terrorist book after 9/11.
I completely agree.
Fair reaction.
Not a great idea. So the last arc is basically, well, the Brotherhood kind of self-destructs and doesn't actually exist anymore. And oh yeah, they're going to fight Wild Choice. They're going to fight Milligan and Allred's X-Force team for what? Okay. And then it ends. And you mentioned the art before. There are some amazing artists here, right? We got early Ribic. These last couple of issues that Sean does are probably the clearest. Big problem with this book is that none of the characters really look that different. All of them are white males with muscular builds that wear overcoats. Nobody has distinctive powers. Nobody has distinctive silhouettes. And it's not really the artist's fault, but because of this, it's very difficult to tell who is who from even page to page.
So I don't know. Jason, do you agree? Could you tell the difference between, let's say, Fagin and Orwell?
None whatsoever. And especially reading this for the first time prior to recording here, wait, is this the kid from the first arc? Is this the big beefy guy that's now inexplicably dating the girl that they brainwashed but never really explained how they brainwashed her? Which one is this?
And they locked her in a coffin, Jason. And then they let her out. That's how you do it.
The release that'll
they did it. On your side, one guy locked her in the coffin, and the other guy's like, "We're not locking people in coffins. We're not doing that."
Now, I will say, like you said, the art, those Bill Sienkiewicz covers on the first 3 issues, I'm a sucker for his art just in general. So, looking at those, it looked like something I could get behind, and then I started reading it, and not so much. But yeah, it was an interesting read. The choice of targeting the Ecstatics X-Force at the end, and more specifically my guy Dupe, was interesting. They lost me there.
I think that's the key thing that happens between 6 and 7. The Brotherhood loses any pretense of having noble goals, and any of the ambiguity of what does a revolution mean against an oppressive government is gone for reasonable reasons, given the circumstances. Yeah, okay, yes, we probably should have handled Iran differently in the 70s and 80s. And there may be some people that have plenty of good reason to be mad at us, but also the public was not going to be accepting a book about terrorists in late 2001, early 2002.
I also think that Mackie, I'm sorry, keep going. I interrupted.
I was just going to say, X, their leader, completely loses the plot. He feels like he has a completely different mindset between the first arc and the last arc. And it's very
interesting.
Well, that's true the whole time.
Yeah.
He's making some interesting points in the first arc, and the second one is we must kill Dupe to show them, to break the heart of mutants. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about, X?
Yeah, doesn't make a lot of sense. And to Jason's point, it's a really big gap between what Mackey's trying to do in these first 3 issues is trying to kind of do a ripped from the headlines type thing, right? Like he has the riff on Asher and his girlfriend and about pressuring her to lose her virginity. He's got the Columbine subplot that he's weaving into things, which I took some issue with. He's doing.
I get it, but I also understand you're concerned with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, he's trying to do all of these sort of like timely things, right? And by the time we get to the last arc, it's like, oh yeah, this is an X book. And here are some pictures of some X teams, and we're going to have an X team in this book, and it doesn't seem to exist in the same reality, X-Force and Milligan and Allred stuff already seem to exist in another universe completely. So to go from this sort of like what Mackie wants to be this very grounded thing to something that seems so fantastic at the end, it just does not work.
The first time I encountered the Brotherhood was in the Ecstatics Omnibus, where Brotherhood number 9 is in with no further context, which is kind of the best way to experience this book. Because Ecstatics are at the end of this after they kill all the Brotherhood. Like, because that's what Ecstatics does. Everyone dies, and they're like, that was a weird thing that we all just did. What was that about? And the book ends there. I do love that ending for the book because it's truly Mackey's like, we were on some stuff for a little bit. That's on us. That's our bad.
It's that's it. I'm out ending.
Oh, 100%.
I think the ending works even though the book's kind of bad. The X-Force stuff is fun.
It's one of those books like when you start reading it, the first, like you said, the first 2 or 3 issues, maybe even just the first issue, had potential to be an interesting book, visually and the story, the setup of the story. But then, like you said, it's like halfway through, whether the ideas were there or not, and it became less interesting. But whether the ideas were there or not, and then this thing happened that changed the entire world, and they're like, yeah, you know what? Just get away from that. And there was no backup idea whatsoever, clearly.
Well, that was the thing is, you're right. There's potential in number 1. I don't know if Howard Mackey is the right writer to realize that potential.
No.
And that was my point earlier, is that of all of the big swings that are going to take place as part of this era, right? Like Morrison is really the only one other than Milligan to actually pull it off, right? Like the other books of this era don't really have that same success rate, right? And Mackey
Claremont pulls off something. I don't know what he pulls off, but he pulls off something.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, but personal opinion. Mackey does not strike me as the writer that has the stuff, right, to really try and pull off something that is dealing with this kind of serious content. And so it ends up being very flat and flimsy when it could be a really interesting kind of juicy, like HBO premiere, like, like prestige television type show. I don't think the dynamics are there with his writing, though.
No, that's the issue. That's the issue.
So, not great.
It's not, but I'm fascinated by it. Like, it's just this is a weird book that exists, right? Like, they did a terrorist book for X-Men.
The fact that it exists is bonkers to me. But I do still think it has, some positives. Like, is this better or worse than what we just talked about with that Wolverine arc?
That's tough to say. Taken in totality, I don't know. I guess it's a little better just because it definitely is trying to do something here, right? Like it's got a direction, at least from Jump Street. whether or not it loses that direction as the story goes on, and obviously it does. But it's trying to do something.
I would tend to agree with Jason on that. So I would put it above that Wolverine.
Okay. Really don't think it can go that much higher though.
Oh, I'm not saying it goes that much higher. I think
this
that
can't go higher than
I think
730.
that the challenging stuff in this comic is challenging to like confront the reader and make them think, where the challenging stuff in Wolverine is to be edgy and dumb. And
Sure.
I will give them merit. I see more merit in that.
I'm going to give a little bit of a span here. I think this is better than at 742, the Soul Sword trilogy from Excalibur. Also has some pretty great Sienkiewicz stuff covers.
Hey, fun fact about the Soul Sword trilogy real quick. Yesterday, I had a friend online. Hi, Kevin. Who I don't know if Kevin listens to
I saw
show,
this.
but if he does, he's happy about this, I'm sure.
Yep.
Who said, I've never heard of the Soul Sword trilogy. I'm going to start reading it. He makes that Blue Sky post. 7 minutes later, he's like, I understand why I have not heard of the Soul Sword trilogy. This is a bad comic, everyone.
Amazing. All right, so this is definitely better than that.
Beautiful
but
timing on that.
Don't think this is as good as at 738 Origin.
I would probably agree with that. Between that, Jason, tell me if you've read any of these.
The New Mutants Volume 2 arc where Rain dates one of her students.
I feel like I did read that, and I feel like it was not good. But it's been so long.
It's not great.
Yeah.
You're right on both counts. What about X-Man, singular man, 5 to 7, the man who fell to Earth?
That's the stuff just coming straight out of the
Straight out.
Apocalypse, like coming into 616.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I've definitely read that.
That time Wolverine went to the Savage Land in his Larry Hama series and fought Sauron.
No, I don't think I've read that far.
I would put this below X-Man, but maybe above the Soul Sword trilogy. And Adam, I would give the edge to Hama just because I like him more. But
I'm going to give the edge to Hama. Give the edge to Hama. That has some fun Jubilee moments in it. So this is going to be our new 700.
That's why I knew you were going to give the edge to Hama.
Hama Jubilee forever. He knows what's up. He knows how to write her.
Well, I mean, he also wrote Generation X, and that's not his best work.
No,
not
that's
great.
true.
No.
90s
Listen,
Wolverine.
Lethal Larry, he's gonna always swing at the ball, and that's what I appreciate about him. That's our episode. I had fun.
That was a blast.
I'm glad to be out of our Attitude Era and into whatever era is next. I don't know what era is next.
We don't have any numerically themed eras coming up next, right? Like, I don't think that's. We didn't plan for any.
We can do 100 episode span to the funny weed number if we want.
Oh, but I don't want to mention that for like 2 solid years. Like we can do better than that.
Guys, we're on the road to the funny weed number.
Jason, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us anything you want to promote, pitch? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. This was fun. Like I said, I've been listening to you guys for a while now, so this is cool to actually come on with you. I'm on every form of social media you can think of, probably even still have a MySpace at Jason Ayers WWE, Twitter, Instagram. Just don't try to find me on Facebook. That's where I do my real life stuff. Also have a silly little Instagram dad joke video that I do with one of the other SmackDown referees at Total Zebras. Feel free to check me out there. And stay tuned. I'm going to be launching a Twitch stream here before too awful long. Go on and hang out and talk some comic books and comic book video games and that sort of thing. So stay tuned for that one. But reach out. I love to interact. I love to talk comics. I love to talk wrestling to a degree. I'm easy to get a hold of, guys.
I like the idea that you like to talk about it to a degree. You're like, at a certain point, you're like, listen, this is a job for me. Like, I don't want to be on the clock all the time.
I didn't want to say that out loud, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Jason, everyone's always asking me, Zach, what about this on your HVAC system? What about this? How can I improve my water heater efficiency? Is the DOE making the right choices on their regulations between tankless and tanked product right now? And the answer is That's what they pay me for, guys. If you want to pay my salary, I'm more than happy to answer all of this.
Jason, if people want to see you ref, when is SmackDown for people who don't normally watch wrestling? How can people watch
currently you can tune in to Fox TV, the network one, not the other one, every Friday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. And then that obviously scales back to 7 Central and onward from there. Premium live events, we're calling them now, are on the Peacock Network, airing live.
I watched one of those. It was great.
Next one of those coming up is a week from Saturday, October. I think that's the 7th for WWE Fastlane. I will definitely be on that one. I'll be the only guy in stripes with a beard.
Are you going to be living life in the fast lane?
I am, considering we're back home in Indianapolis for that one.
Whoa.
Back in good old Indiana. Yeah. But then, next October we move to USA Network, but we're not going to discuss that yet.
Are we allowed to put that on the air?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The press release is out on that. I don't know any specifics, beyond we're moving. So.
All right, cool.
I bet it'll be great.
Yeah.
Folks,
Jason,
listen, the USA Network has a long history of wrestling content, is my understanding.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we go back. Yeah.
Go back.
We go back like Cadillac seats is the phrase I like to use. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great this week.
Oh, thank you guys.
All right, folks, you can always follow me on social media. Adam Reck on Blue Sky, Arthur Stacy on whatever Twitter is, and whatever I am on Instagram. Anyway, follow on those accounts. Just did Jean Grey 2 with my one and only Anna. Check that out. That series is awesome, and we're having a blast writing about it. Yeah. Zach, what are we doing next week?
Next week we're playing dominoes, Adam. We're playing some dominoes. We're gonna line them up. We're gonna knock them. I don't actually know how to play dominoes.
Don't you have to match the numbers up and then?
What part of I don't know how to play dominoes makes you think that I would be able to explain the
finger
rules?
Diagram? Like, I don't know what I'm talking about.
It didn't work. It didn't work. But until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom, and we hope you survived the experience.
Get it!